Greetings and salutations, Charlton66 here once again with another video. I hope everyone's doing well. This time I'm going to try to do a video inspired by Deadpool 2323. He did his top 25 books. That's something I can't do. I try to do that. My collection is really, there's a lot of emotional attachment to most of what I have. Most of everything I have, with the exception of Golden Age and obviously Silver Age books I bought off the rack. So there's an emotional attachment. I can remember time, places, friends I was with, my parents, what have you, on certain books. So it's I don't do any speculation. Everything I buy, I want for my collection, and it's something that I want to keep. There's a reason why I want to keep it. So trying to pick just 25 books is very difficult. So I just took 25 random books, and there's a couple of I picked because of the emotional attachment and certain things that bring back fond memories, like a lot of us do when we collect our comics. There's always something there that brings us back. I know Dr. Bonchilla has most of his collection, from my understanding, from watching his videos, he bought off the rack. And it just you have an emotional attachment. I know I do. And so some of these books are like that. Some of them aren't. I'll throw a little bit of artwork in here because I have some pages from my favorite comic books, or recreations, so to speak, from some of my favorite comic books. So without further ado, this is not really a comic book, but it has comic book material in it. It has an awesome Captain Adam story by Ditko and John Byrne, which I think is very cool. And it's Charlton Bullseye #1, signed by Bob Layton. This is something I'll never part with. Again, these are not in any particular order. None of my collection can fall in any order. In any given day, I'll give you 25 different books. Today, I'll give you 25 tomorrow. There's complete, differences, I should say, on what I'm doing, because I don't have a favorite. It's weird. I know it's hard to explain. Anyway, I digress. Next book is near and dear to my heart, not because it's such a key, but it's my favorite Marvel character. Tales of Suspense 39. It has a date stamp even on it, December 27th, 1962, right up here on the S. But it's a nice reading copy. It's complete. Everything's all there, and so everything's all attached. And having the first appearance of Iron Man is very cool. My very first Iron Man comic book that I ever remember buying on my own. This is not the original copy, unfortunately. That copy is long gone, but it's Iron Man 67. I was watching someone's video. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Jim Mint. He went to San Diego. I can't remember. I don't want to say. I can't remember what video, but someone had the original artwork to this cover, which I thought was very awesome. So after seeing Iron Man 67, seeing that there is a numbering system to the comic books, I went out and obviously wanted to get 68 and onward. So I missed it somehow. So the next one I bought on my own was 69. Awesome Ron Wilson cover. And I knew it went up a cool nickel, which was disheartening. But along with that, I have a recreation of that cover. I can't afford the original cover, even if it's for sale from someone. But so I had the recreation I got by Ron Wilson of the cover of '69. And one of my favorite annuals, Iron Man annuals, Kingside Annual number 3, has one of my other favorite characters in there, Man Thing, which is such a great story, and the ending could have spawned onto something to other things. I don't want to explain the ending to you, but it could have spawned some other really cool stories, even to in the modern times, if you think about it. And if Man Thing did, if Man Thing does what he did in the issue and continues, I can't explain it without giving away the end of the story. But if the ending kept going the way that it did in the comic book, it could exploit it. A writer could have exploited it or explored it much further into the Marvel universe. So, because Molecule Man's wand is very, very powerful. So, anyway, the next one is Metal Man number 47, signed by Walt Simonson. Where I have a whole run of Metal Men. This was the very first Metal Men comic book that I got. My mom went to the store. She knew I liked Iron Man, so she saw Metal Men, thought it might have been the same thing. Someone who doesn't read comics, who doesn't really care about comic books back then. Obviously, it's my mom, but she bought this particular issue instead of Iron Man, thinking it's the same thing. But anyway, this was the issue that I fell in love with the Metal Men with. And ended up getting the whole run, including their first appearance in Tales of Suspense and Showcase. Justice League 107 and 108 together. The Freedom Fighters, their first appearance, which is, I love the Golden Age heroes. This is just a fun, virtual cornucopia of superhero goodness and heroism, and I just love this stuff. Introducing the different Earths and everything else. It's got one of my favorite, the Human Bomb. He's my favorite freedom fighter. One of my favorite Golden Age characters is Mr. Terrific. In Justice League 37, they brought in some Golden Age characters. Of course, Mr. Terrific is prominent on the cover. This is one of my other favorite comics. Great stuff. Anytime, most of my Justice League collection is all geared towards any appearance of Earth 2 characters or the Golden Age characters. Any of those appear in a Justice League comic book, it's in my collection. Or any of my favorite villains, Vandal Savage, Per Degaton, or Darkseid. I'm there. Of course, with that being said, of course, Justice League 21 has to be in the collection. Such a great cover. I'd love to have a recreation of this cover by one of my favorite artists. And on to something newer. Madman. This is my first introduction to Madman. He's far different back then than he is now. This is just a bizarre comic. This whole series, Trapped by Gravity, is one of 3. I have all 3, but he actually eats someone's eyes in this. Very, very bizarre, but very good comic. Very good comic. This has made me a fan of Madman. Another Charlton, of course, one of the greatest covers ever on a comic book, in my opinion. By the awesome Don Newton, the underrated awesome Don Newton. Phantom number 74. This is the last Charlton issue. And this cover is just awesome. And got the Declaration of Independence here, of course, the American flag, and Don Newton right there. It's his signature. Is one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. But it's just a get some light off of this. Phenomenal cover. Unfortunately, that was the last Charlton issue. Another Charlton, great series by Joe Staton and Nick Cuddy. Did Nick Cuddy? Yeah. Awesome E-Man. Signed by Joe Staton right there. It's a nice high grade copy. The next comic book I have is the first appearance of one of my favorite DC villains, Per Degaton. This is his first appearance. Such a great cover. I love the hourglass. It's number 35 of All Star Comics. And this issue, of course, has Jay Garrick in it and Vandal Savage. So this issue of Flash had to make it into the collection, Flash 137. This next comic book makes it in because of various reasons. It's the first TV hero to get his own comic book. And it's just, it screams 1950s, which is one of my favorite decades. The ray gun, Captain Video, the young sidekick, came from TV, first TV character to make it into the comics. Captain Video, that's the first issue, by the way. Of course, my beloved Metal Men, I showed this the other day. But this is Showcase 37, first appearance of the Metal Men. And I spoke before about Steve Conley, and it's the first book I ever bought from him when I first met him. And it's got the sketch on the back like I showed before, but it's Astounding Space Thrills #1. Back from, he signed it from 1998, so... And it's one of these creators that I have somewhat of a relationship with. You know, I see my comic book shows and we talk and chit chat, and he knows me, I know him, and it's kind of a you know, of a somewhat of a friendship. I mean, it's one of those things where you don't want to get to the point of overstepping your bounds or whatever with a comic book professional, but it's one of those things that we talk and talk about comics and what he's got going on. But anyway, it's the first time that I really got an independent comic book from a creator that really was passionate about the comic book that they're working on and the comic book business in general. And it was just we kicked it off and been had a relationship ever since, comic book wise anyway. The next comic book I had is the very first comic book that I remember being exposed to. Barbershop with my grandfather. Again, this is not the original copy, but it's the comic. So, comic book called Smokey from Dell, and right there is a page of original artwork from this comic book. I was fortunate enough to get that. It's not too exciting. There's nothing really happening on it. It's just a page from this comic book. So nothing to write home about, but it's still cool to have a page from the very first comic book that I got exposed to. And how things come in full circle, George Gross did the cover, or Gross, however you want to say his name. He later went on to do the Avenger paperback covers. Do I have one here? Yeah. I showed this before. I got the whole run of the Avenger books, but he did these covers on all the most of the Avenger books. The same cover artist did this. So, and it's one of one of my favorite pulp heroes. It's funny how how things come around full circle. And to me, this is the greatest comic book ever written and drawn. Uh, what if the Avengers had never been? What if #3? It has everything a comic book should have in it. I've talked about this comic book before. Everyone should have this in their collection. It's a phenomenal comic. My man Iron Man saves the day like he always does. But it's one of those books that transcend everything. So if you don't have a copy of this, get yourself a copy and read it. I guarantee you won't be disappointed in it. So, phenomenal comic book. Another comic book that's up there is Omega the Unknown. For me, it's sublime. It's one of those comic books that made me realize when I first read it many years ago that comic books don't have to be about superheroes battling all the time or just a fight from here to here, which I enjoy. That's why I read comic books. But it's almost like a tragic hero, almost reading Omega the Unknown. It has phenomenal artwork in it. It's got and the costume was kind of hokey, but it's neat for that time period. I think Jim Mooney did an awesome job on the artwork. I think Herb Trimpe might have designed the costume, though, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know who designed it. It might have been Mooney designing the costume. I can't remember. But it's such a great comic book for a hero who doesn't have any dialogue in it. Steve Gerber really and Mary Screens did a lot to convey what's going on with this hero in this comic book. So it's a phenomenal read. It should be on everyone's want list. It's the first appearance. It's a short-lived series. I think it only lasted 10 issues. So again, it's not anything by Steve Gerber is not your run-of-the-mill comic book, but that is still being a superhero book. It's not your run-of-the-mill superhero book. So, I'm on 17 minutes. I'll try to hurry up. Another one's a recent book. More recent. It's from '94. Scud, the Disposable Assassin. I had this whole run. Such a great comic book concept and series. I met the artist and writer. I got the first 3 issues signed by Rob Schraub. Or Schrabe, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Schrab. But I met him back, I think it was in Philadelphia Comic Con, and he had the first 3 issues. It's about an assassin robot or an android that's supposed to self-destruct after you can go to a vending machine and hire this robot, pay for this robot to go and assassinate someone for you. But upon the completion of the target or the completion of the assassination, the robot's supposed to just self-destruct. Well, Scud does his assignment. He goes to the bathroom to do something, and he sees in the mirror on the back that he's supposed to destroy himself. He doesn't want to destroy himself, so then he's going to keep his target alive. The target he tried to kill, now he's going to try to keep it alive by keeping it in the hospital. So to pay for the hospital bills, he needs to go out and do other missions and other assignments to get money to help pay for the hospital bills to keep his target alive so he don't have to self-destruct. That's just a base storyline, but other things happen. It's layered like an onion, his storyline, but it's a great comic book. I recommend. I think Image put out a whole volume of the whole complete run. I think it's pretty pricey, though. But if you ever see these comic books, pick them up. I know Silver Age Dave had a stack in one of his videos. I think he's going to talk about it at some point. I have not watched all of his videos, so he may have already done that. Another one of my first comic books I picked up, Marvel 2-in-1 number 13, Thing and Power Man. One of the first comics I remember picking up. I think it was along with that Iron Man. Made me like both of these characters. My favorite He's my favorite FF member, and I love Power Man. Again, I love this comic so much. That had another recreation by Ron Wilson. I couldn't obviously afford the original artwork, so got a recreation of that cover. Over here or not, but had that done. Almost done here, folks. Couple more books. Thanks for hanging with me. And again, one of my favorite Silver Age teams, Thunder Agents. Here's Thunder Agents #1, Wally Wood goodness. In this series, you've got everyone in there. You've got Wally Wood doing stuff. You got Steve Ditko doing stuff. You've got George Tuska. You've got Lialis. That's how you say his last name. Reed Crandall. I don't know if I mentioned Steve Ditko or not, but you had all these people doing stuff for the Thunder Agents, which is a phenomenal, underrated Silver Age series. Last but not least, from Kitchen Sink Press, Spirit. It's my first exposure to the Spirit and Will Eisner's greatness. I picked up that comic book and I was like, wow. And then I try to find everything I can on the Spirit. The Kitchen Sink magazines, anything like that they put out with the Spirit, I was all over it. Phenomenal stuff. But that's it. Thanks for staying with me for 21 minutes. I hope everyone enjoyed my favorite 25 for right now. Again, I might have a favorite 25 next week or the week after. Heck, I got favorite 25 right now that I can pull out and talk about. Anyway, I hope you enjoy your Sunday, and you guys take care.